In their attempt to discredit the Christian religion, and indeed the person of Jesus himself, atheist and supposedly rational types are fond of offering certain scriptures from the New Testament. Now, I can make a point about the hypocrisy of such people criticizing Christians for the scriptural cherry-picking they engage in, but I'll mention that only in passing. One of the most notable of these scriptures is from the Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus said, "Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." The ironic thing about the way these atheists deal with such scriptures is that the Christians they wish to demonize with them actually do, for the most part, a far better job of interpreting them. The way the atheist crowd tends to do so is so shallow that a flea couldn't drown in it. Indeed, the general worldview of most atheist types, certainly not all, but most, outside of the mental compartment of their metaphysical opinions, as important as those views may be, is usually shallow and mundane, and lacking in any ideational spirit whatsoever, or seemingly the ability to perceive and acknowledge ideational spirit in others. So what was Jesus really talking about in that quote? Was he just crapping on like your average idiot cult leader demanding complete personal devotion? Of course not. If you think that, then clearly it's your agenda to do so. Jesus was simply using himself as a symbol of something, a particular ideal, an ideal to which devotion means certain things, necessitates certain consequences, even certain sacrifices. Oddly enough, atheists can't see the parallels in their own lives, that of their own struggle for intellectual independence and identity in their own religious households, and the familial consequences of deciding to uphold and devote themselves to the values they profess. They don't end up literally hating their families. And Jesus certainly wasn't talking about literally hating. One thing we have to keep in mind is that certain phrases and figures of speech are different in different cultures. They mean different things in different cultures and different things in different times. What Jesus is saying is essentially two things. That truth naturally stands against untruth, and to the degree that one's friends and family dwell in untruth, they must be rejected, or if you like, turned against by the truth seeker. He's also saying that if one is to embark on the philosophical, the spiritual path, then they must value that above all other things. The reason for that ought to be obvious enough. Without that depth of valuation, truth will remain elusive. Just think for a minute about what dedication to such a path means. It means the critical examination and potential rejection of everything. Everything that one values and holds dear. Everything one currently believes or holds to be reasonable. Now, this is no small thing, and yet the philosophical path is nothing less than this. Anything less, and it's not the philosophical path at all. If you approach this journey as a dilettante, or as an academic or scholar, or as one merely expressing intellectual curiosity, or as some high IQ savant with a chip on his shoulder and a point to prove, you are not on any authentic philosophical path. Philosophy, or the path to truth, is not some compartmentalized intellectual activity one does because one can't think of anything better to do. It's a blood and guts, all or nothing, do or die commitment. If you can't stare that commitment and all that it demands in the face and say a truly affirmative yes, even if that yes carries a degree of trepidation, and it really ought to, then don't embark on that journey at all. It's really not one for the faint-hearted. I don't mean to sound theatrical here. It just isn't. Embarking on the serious philosophical path is like buying a one-way ticket to a destination whose character we know nothing about. Logic dictates that the destination exists, but we can't know anything about its nature, or what we might discover along the way. I tell you, there are some things one sees along the journey that quite simply cannot be unseen. If you've ever seen Pamela Anderson's dalliance with plastic surgery, you'll know what this means. Some things once seen simply cannot be unseen. And even if you get cold feet and manage to somehow scramble your way back home from this path, it is highly unlikely that home will ever again be exactly the same. In short, the journey is really for those who are prepared to relinquish everything. If you lack that preparedness, then there's little point in proceeding. Essentially, I've got two reasons for speaking this way. One is ostensibly a selfish reason, and the other not quite so selfish. The first being that the dilettantes and academics I spoke of earlier tend to do nothing but unnecessarily complicate the journey. They lay down false and misleading paths, often out of the emotional need to rest in safe places in their mind. Such people may possess enough insight to see that their thinking is leading them in directions that they simply cannot go. That is, there are yet some things they're not prepared to relinquish or question. So all they do is ruin the path for others. My not-so-selfish reason for speaking of such things is that I frankly just don't like to see people get messed up for no good reason. So the next time you see some atheist or secular protagonist using this or similar scriptures as weapons against Christianity or Jesus, just consider what Jesus said in the light of an ideational spirit. Consider that what he said is not really different from the Buddha offering the Four Noble Truths and his devised method of Buddhism as a means to escape the delusions of the world. That method is all about turning from the false and all the things that abide in falsity, whatever and whomever they may be. It doesn't mean literally hating or wishing ill upon anything or anyone. It simply means being authentic and true to one's goals and values.